Hello everyone, and welcome to your next revision video on divergent attitudes and a extended writing question as well. So your first side is just looking at those three issues: capital punishment, pilgrimage, and assisted suicide, euthanasia. And I want you to tell me Catholic, other Christian, Jewish, and atheist attitudes to these. So pause the video now and make detailed notes, please, on these issues. Off you go. So capital punishment. Now there's a few obvious reasons why Catholics are against capital punishment. Things like do not kill, sanctity of life, the fact that we're made in the Imago Dei. But you may also get asked a question about the development of Catholic teachings on capital punishment. So you'd need to start with St. Augustine, who said that it was lawful slaying. So essentially he was saying that if someone commits a crime when they know that the penalty is capital punishment, then they are essentially committing suicide. They are accepting their fate. That view lasted a long time within the church. Now, Pope John Paul II said that actually it was wrong. Capital punishment was wrong. It didn't really fit with the teachings of Jesus. But he said that actually in some instances, when there are no other punishments which fit the crime, it should be acceptable and allowed. Pope Francis says that it is never acceptable. So our current Pope, he says that it's always wrong. He says that it's not a deterrent. If we look at countries such as America and the States which have the death penalty, actually their rates of murder are higher than anywhere else. So it doesn't really work at all. And he says it doesn't fit with the Christian message of love. Now, some Christians would allow it. They would say that in the Old Testament it says an eye for an eye, which is retribution, and this idea that actually we should allow it because of this. And other Christian groups would say they would agree with Catholics and say that actually Jesus taught love and compassion and forgiveness, and we should look to try and forgive people and reform them and change them rather than take away their life. Now, within Judaism, we have in the Old Testament, it is listed as a punishment for certain crimes. However, it is rarely used within Jewish countries, and the Torah states do not kill. So that's important that you understand and recognize that Jews are, although they can allow it, they rarely would use it. Atheists and humanists, they might say that, well, actually it's acceptable because it's a deterrent, it puts people off. Some crimes like murder or terrorism, they're big enough and mean that actually the death penalty should be used, and they may feel that it keeps society safe as well. So pause the video now, and in a different coloured pen, I would like you to add any new information. So pause it now and add any new information. Okay. Pilgrimage is the next issue. So Catholics might go on pilgrimage to strengthen their faith, get closer to God, to get closer to other Christians, to pray and to be healed. Now, places like Lourdes are very important because Lourdes is seen to be a place where Mary appeared to the young girl Bernadette. So Catholics will go there to feel closer to her and feel closer to God's presence. They will go there to ask Mary to pray for them, to maybe be healed, or to maybe to help them with any problems they are having in their life. And when they're there, they might indulge in forms of popular piety, such as the Rosary, which again asks Mary to intercede for us. Some Christians will go on pilgrimage to sites like Walsingham. However, some Christians will reject going on pilgrimage because God is everywhere. He's omnipresent. So what's the point in traveling when we can feel God's presence here and at home? Places like Lourdes may be seen to venerate Mary, and they believe that's wrong because it breaks the commandment, do not worship false idols. Jews would go on pilgrimage. They will go on pilgrimage to the Holy Land, and this allows them to reconnect with their history and heritage and with other people who are like them. However, they wouldn't go to a place of pilgrimage like Lourdes, first of all, because they are not Christian, and second of all, for the same reason as other Christians, which they would say, well, actually, this is praying to someone who isn't God, so it's breaking one of the 10 commandments. So pause the video now and make notes on that, please. And finally, we have assisted suicide. Catholics believe that euthanasia and assisted suicide are always wrong because they break the principle of sanctity of life. They believe that instead we should look to die well, and by dying well, that means using palliative care, so going into hospices and being cared for. We could write a will to tie up any money problems or any money matters that may be there. We could meet with family before we die and try and say goodbye properly, but Catholics are 100% against assisted suicide and euthanasia. However, some Christians would say that actually it's the most loving thing to do in some instances. They would say that Jesus said, love thy neighbour. He also said, treat others how you wish to be treated. So this could fall within those categories. Jews say that ending a life is wrong because it breaks the principle of sanctity of life, and they place life before all things, even the commandments. Atheists would look at quality of life rather than sanctity of life, and they would say, well, if someone has a very poor quality of life, it may be acceptable to end their life early. Peter Singer is someone who is in favour of assisted suicide and euthanasia. He says that it brings more happiness to families than allowing someone to linger in a very poorly state. And some humanists would say, well, you wouldn't allow a dog or a pet to go on when they're in immense pain. You would put them down. So why not? Should we not be able to put our family members out of their misery if they are suffering as well? Okay, so pause the video and I want you to take notes on this, please. In side 2, you have some key terms from the specification, some key questions, and a evaluation question. So pause the video and work through that now, please. So our key terms: Mary is the model of the church, is an example of how we can be disciples today. She trusted Jesus and gave her life to God. The altar is the centre of the church. It is where the bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ. So it's really central to our faith. The font is where baptism takes place. It's where original sins are cleansed. The lectern is where the Bible is read from. Stained glass windows are found around churches, and they often depict Bible stories. For those people who can't read, they're important because they actually highlight key points of stories. Baptism is the first sacrament. It is a sacrament of initiation into the church, and it cleanses people of original sin. The Eucharist is seen to be the source and summit of Christian living, which means it's the most important part of a Christian's life, and it's where we eat the bread and come into communion with God. Confirmation, again, another initiation sacrament, is where we become confirmed as full members of the church, and we may take on, or we do take on, the name of a saint. Evangelism is spreading the word of God. Jesus said to go and make disciples of all nations. Our mission of the church is to do this and to tell people about Jesus' saving grace. And finally, faith is belief in God. Pause the video there and green pen correct anything that you may not have got. A funeral. What happens at a funeral? Well, the body will enter the church within the coffin with the Bible on top of it to symbolize the faith of the person who's being buried, the crucifix on top to symbolize the fact that Jesus died for our salvation, for the salvation of the person who is within the coffin. There's readings about the resurrection, which highlight the fact that Jesus died, was resurrected, and so too will this person. And the priest speaks about life after death. There's also Thor's Requiem, the music, and this gives people hope that they will meet their loved one again. The symbols of the Catholic funeral, so the crucifix, as I've mentioned, the holy water, which is sprinkled on the coffin, which links the person back to their baptism. We also have the Paschal candle, which is maybe found as well and is lit, and again links that person back to their baptism when they entered the church, and the soil, which is sprinkled over the coffin when the person is buried. So why do people pray? We might pray for forgiveness, to ask for something, and to glorify God. And this can be remembered as the acronym ACTS. And these are all different types of prayer which can be found in the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father. So adoration, so we're given adoration, we're saying God is amazing. Confession, we're asking God to forgive us. Thanksgiving, we're thanking God for everything He's given us. In supplication, we are just asking Him to help us, or asking for something from God. These are all found within the Lord's Prayer in all types of Catholic prayers. So pause the video there and take notes on that now, please. Okay, so now you're going to do the D question, and I want you to do a full D question. Now remember, when you're doing a D question, you need to give reasons for, reasons against, and you need to reach a justified conclusion. So you need to say which side is the strongest and why. Now, it's not prescriptive, so you don't have to give 2 reasons for, 2 reasons against, and a conclusion. You could give 3 reasons for, 1 against, and a conclusion. You could give 1 reason for and 2 really strong reasons against and a conclusion, and that would be fine as long as there's depth within your answers. So don't be spending too long trying to think of a 4th point, when you're in your exams, and wasting time, because it might not be necessary. So as long as you've got the depth, if you feel like you've written enough, if you've gone on to the next page, then you've definitely written enough. So just try not to worry about doing 2 for, 2 against a conclusion. Just as long as there's some balance and there's a conclusion, then you should be all right. Now, remember, we need to try and include some sources. You don't need a source in every paragraph. That is unrealistic. You need to try and include key terms as well. Now, in each paragraph, what we like you to do is to give some appraisal, some evaluation. So that could be within the team site, there is sheets about appraisal, so it's showing you why something might be strong source or why it might be a weak source. So if you give a point which is from the Bible, then you might want to say, well, this is a strong point because it's from the Bible, which is the inspired word of God. Or you might say, actually, some people might consider this a weak point because effectively the Bible is very old and it might be out of date. Okay, so try and give some appraisal there. Now, you don't have to just evaluate in this way. You can think about the impact of a teaching as well. Okay, so once you've given a point and developed it, you might want to think about what impact might this have on the lives of someone who is living today? How might it affect their lives? How might it affect them when they die? Okay, if we believe in heaven and hell and purgatory, well, how might their actions affect them when they die? Okay, so that might shape how they should live their lives. Now, this should take you about 12 minutes to complete. Okay, so have a go. Okay, so pause the video and then I'm going to talk you through a paragraph and then we will move from there. So good luck, pause the video now and off you go. So here's my first paragraph for answering this question. It said that Catholics would agree with this statement. Remember, you're not answering from what you think, okay? This is about what Catholics think, other Christians think, Jews and atheists. Okay, so you're explaining what their views are, and then you evaluate their views. So Catholics would agree with this statement because ending our lives early through assisted suicide, euthanasia, breaks the principle of sanctity of life. So sanctity of life, that's a key phrase, key term. It's also something which is linked to the Bible. Okay, so very important teaching here. This means that all life comes from God, and only God should be able to end it. So I've given my point, which is sanctity of life. Then I've just explained what sanctity of life is. Okay, that's simple. That's your development. Okay, now here is my appraisal. This is a strong argument, as these teachings can be found in the Holy Bible, which is the inspired word of God, and so must be respected and followed by all people at all times. Okay, dead simple. Okay, so it's just basically saying, principle of sanctity of life, this is what it is, and this is why it should be followed. Okay, because it's from the Bible. And then I've doubly developed it. Okay, I've added the impact. So this is my evaluation being developed even more. If someone were to decide to break this principle, they would be going against the will of God, which may lead them to be judged negatively when they die. As such, it is important that we do not end life earlier than when God has planned for it to end. Okay, that's as simple as your paragraphs need to be. Okay, but what you can see there is we've got a point, sanctity of life, developed it by just explaining what it means. Then I've evaluated the source and said why the source makes this a strong point. And then I've thought about what the impact of following or breaking this teaching is. Okay, that's as simple as it needs to be. And if you did that throughout, you'd get full marks. Okay, so next I'm going to just show you the rest of my answer. Okay, follows very similar pattern. I want you to look at it, read through it, and I want you to make some notes on your own, okay, and just to develop your own answer. Now, you may want to speak to your teacher and ask them about D questions. And it's really important that now we are coming really close to the exams that you practice D questions. So we're going to be doing a lot more of them within these, but also you should be starting to do them by yourself at home because 50% of the course is on D questions. So if you get good at evaluating, you know the knowledge, okay, we know the knowledge because we've been practicing that for a while, okay, but if we now apply these D questions and evaluate it, you're going to be coming out with your 7s, 8s, and 9s, okay. So here's the full answer. I'm not going to read it to you, okay, because that would just be quite boring for you, but pause the video. I want you to read through it, and I want you to just take notes, think about bits that maybe, where's the evaluation? So you might want to just, highlight the evaluation or write down where the evaluation is on this. Write down the key words, write down the key thinkers. Okay, these are things you might want to do with it, but read it and take notes. Now, as always, when you finish the video, I want you to go back and anything you've done in a different colored pen, that's where your revision needs to lead you to, okay? Because you have not got secure knowledge of that. So you need to be studying it, looking through your notes, looking through your revision guides, and ensuring that you develop your knowledge and understanding of that. And your teachers will help you with that as well. All you need to do is speak to them about it. Okay, good luck with it, and well done for making your way through this video.